Okay, it's me. Steve said he was going to keep it simple. I can out-simple Steve. Okay, this is very, very straightforward in all honesty. So this is a title, and it's not a title you'd want to give to a frame monkey, but this is what they do to you when you come to Leeds. So it's a simple question. It should have a binary answer. Is dynamizing a nail just a misplaced concept? Is it just a thing? And you want the honest answer? I'll give you the honest answer. I'll tell you what I think. The honest answer is, I don't think we know, and I think it's an ecumenical question. I think it's simply a question of which books you read and who you listen to, and if you don't know who that is, ask the middle-aged British members of the faculty later. Feck. Arse. Okay, so those of you who are kid surgeons can sort of relax for a minute or two. So I'm talking now to those of you who do any adult practice whatsoever. Which is who? Who does adults? In the room, all of you, put your hands up if you ever touch an adult in anger at work. All right? So those of you who are kid surgeons, you can just relax a little bit because I'm not going to be glaring at you for a minute or two. So I have a simple question for you. This was a high-violence road traffic accident 3 months before this film was taken. Struck by a vehicle, significant brain injury, nailed at 36 hours because of the brain injury, recovered remarkably well from his brain injury. He's from Tameside, so we're not sure if he's got brain injury at all or whether that's just normal for Tameside. But we're 3 months in, it still hurts, he's still on 2 crutches. Who would? There's nothing tricky up there at the top of the film. This is just a standard nail with 2 screws at the bottom, 2 screws at the top, done in a small hospital in the middle of Greater Manchester. If you don't know, ask a member of the faculty later. So there are 2 screws up there, they're intact, these are intact. He's 3 months down the track, he's still on 2 crutches, it still hurts like billy-o. He's come to clinic. Who of those of you that do adult practice whatsoever would dynamize this nail now at 3 months? Go back to what Bob was talking about. Has something gone wrong yet? Probably not. Do you think it will soon? Do you think it's definitely going to? Who's going to dynamize this nail? It's a very, well, I'll be even fairer to you, all right, because I am famously a fair man. There are only 3 answers you're allowed to give. So, simple question. Adult surgeons in the room, who would dynamize this nail? So who's yes, I would dynamize this nail? Okay. Who is, I might dynamize this nail at 3 months in this man? So you're the sort of not quite sure sort of thing. And who definitely would not, because they would either leave it alone or they would do something different. Okay, so the yes group, you seem to make your minds up fairly easy. The no group seem very, very dogmatic. So if you're not going to do anything at 3 months in this bloke who still can't walk properly, let me ask you the next question. Are you just going to do nothing? Or are you going to do something that's not dynamizing? So those of you that just put your hands up, where's the no groups? Who said no? So those people who would not dynamize this nail at 3 months in this lad who can't walk, put your hands up so I can see them. None of this. Right? This is not parliamentary voting. We want to know how you voted. Okay? Of those of you with, put your hand back up. Keep your hand up if you're just going to do nothing and watch it. So Alex, Elizabeth, 1, 2, 3. So there are a group of you who are not going to dynamize it, but you're going to do something else instead at 3 months. So put your hands back up. Okay? I need to pick a volunteer. Is that a contradiction of terms? Miss Bashir. Oi. Yeah, you. What are you going to do at 3 months? You don't need a microphone, dear. Just shout.
I'd probably exchange nail.
You'd probably re-nail him. Okay? Broad agreement? So those of you who are not going to dynamize it, you're not going to leave it alone, you're going to talk about re-nailing this at whatever we are, 12, 13, 14 weeks. We good? broad agreement, and that's a fairly average response. Okay, the reason I put in 3 answers is there are at least 3 answers, there are probably even 4. Wretched shame about the waiting list, isn't it? And that's when he comes to me, that's a whole separate story. So, same question, children's surgeons nod off, it's fine. Same figure, 3 months. Let's just call this 3 months. Knocked off his motorbike, 3 months, fit, healthy, still on his crutches, can't get off his crutches, still hurts like mad, can't go back to work. We're 3 months down the track. We don't think it's healed. So you're saying 3 questions, okay? You've only got the 3 options. Who's going to dynamise this formally at this stage? Well, or has he? Okay, so who would do an operation to this? Who would take out some screws from this now at 3 months down the track? Good, okay. Who might do something, depending on which way the wind was blowing? So we might just leave this alone. We might just suck it and see. Is that a reasonable description, Amir?
My worry is that it's only 3 months. It looks from here that he's broken one of the screws. So if anything, I'm worried that it's too unstable. So if I'm going to do something, it'll be quite the opposite of dynamizing because it's so early and I don't think it'll end well.
Okay, that's fine. So I'm cheating very slightly, but you haven't caught me, so it doesn't count as cheating. That screw broke at 2 weeks. That screw's been there since his post-operative film and nothing has changed since. But you see the level of confusion that this brings. So it's just a tibial fracture, for heaven's sake. And already we're sort of dancing around this 3 points of what we may or may not choose to do. So then comes on to the question, and we've all dynamized nails at some points in our training. Some of us, for all I know, are still, in fact, a number of you seem very keen on the idea a little while ago. So why do we do it? And I have a look through, and I will tell you what my numbers are in a little while, but why do we do it? And you know, the honest answer is, I think sometimes you just feel you've got to do something. You know, and I say this with all due respect to some of my colleagues, if you're on an on-call rota and you do a fracture clinic, but actually you're not a trauma monkey, it's actually very easy to think, I really need to do something because this poor lad's struggling and he's in trouble. And if you've never read The Lion and Albert, read it on the way home. It's a beautiful poem. Okay? We all know this story, don't we? Everybody's boss has said this to them at some stage, haven't they? They had a nail, the screws broke, the fracture healed. Everybody's boss has said this to them at some stage in their career. And the honest answer is, something's going to be done. Taking locking screws out is quick and it's low risk. As I hope I'm going to show you, sometimes it works. So here is the diamond concept, or as it's known in certain parts of Yorkshire, Professor Janudis' 5-pointed triangle. Wait for it, it will get there in the end. Where he puts, mechanical stability, it sits down here, but never actually puts a value or a range or where we should be trying to put that into. Just says it matters. And everybody's got a hungry, so grateful thanks. Bob's in the room somewhere. Interestingly, if you read this paper and you look at the list of authors, whichever one of those authors you speak to, they will tell you they had the idea first and everybody else wrote it up instead. And I think there are 12 authors, okay? But the argument is that somewhere in here there is a point where the bone feels sufficient strain that it will try and make more bone. And the argument, I think, is if you just give it a bit of a kick to change it, you might just make it move a little bit. It's probably voodoo in terms of dynamizing nails, okay? So we then come around to this, and this is the thing that intelligent patients ask you. You're talking about doing an operation. I accept it's a day case. It'll probably be fine. You never look bad removing metalwork. It never goes wrong. But does it work? And then you have to start doing a bit of science. You actually start looking at papers. And none of these are big, and none of them are absolutely convincing. but there is one in there somewhere that I really do think I believe. So you read through all this. This is early. They all say the same things. Don't worry about it too much, okay? 35 fractures treated by dynamizing, 54% of them healed. Get your calculator out. 54% of whatever I said, 35, is not an integer. So presumably somewhere there is part of a patient who healed in their tibia or femur. So 35, let's call it half of them healed if you just dynamize them. Random group, all sorts of stuff. The thing that best correlated, the thing that made it work best was how well was it healing when you did it. That is not rocket science, is it really? Okay, same sorts of things. This is a big retrospective review by Paul Tanetta and his colleagues. They identified 194 patients with nailed fractures that failed to heal, and a portion were dynamized and a portion of them underwent exchange nailing, and remarkably, they had 97 in each group. Statistically, that's almost impossible to achieve. There's probably a fiddle factor. Okay, but they said the same things. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. It's not really helping you in your fracture clinic, is it really? So let's move on. Does dynamization early work? Small study, 37 cases. It doesn't work if your fracture's complex. It doesn't work if your fracture's not trying to heal in the first place. Doing simple things to fractures that are not going to do well, remarkably, just doesn't help them. Then it all starts to get slightly more complex. Partial dynamization. Vader talked about this a little bit earlier on. Don't dynamize by taking out all the screws, dynamizing it by allowing it to collapse along the nail so you get a degree of axial compression, dynamic axial compression as the patient stands on it and loads it and all those sorts of things. But again, they come back to these same subjects. Dynamizing it late really didn't seem to work, and the more unstable it got, the less well they seemed to do. This is Pete's thing, much less cheerful, but again, 30-odd cases. If you dynamize a fracture that's not doing very well, it won't do very well. Apparently the Pope is Catholic, and where do bears go to the toilet? In the end, you need to ask somebody clever. And there are many people in this room cleverer than I am. And I think this is the thing that tied it together, and I think I've earned the privilege. There's a chick from Lithuania. Oh.
True story.
And a whole load of big old hairy-backed orthopedic surgeons who looked into this as one of the great remaining problems of our day, the last great thing, superstring theory in fractures. Who said, we know all this stuff, we're trying to work out, probably dynamizing works sometimes, but we don't know when, we don't know why, we don't know how, we're back to the clavicle, we're back to the humerus. It works sometimes, we don't know why it doesn't work other times. And if you are going to do it, you should do it to a fracture that's stable, that's trying to make a bit of bone, that is not complex or multifragmentary, proxy for instability, I would suggest. If you're going to do it early, so do it before about 24, 25, 6 weeks, that sort of 6-month thing. And if you can, leave it rotationally stable, but allow it to collapse along its axis, the online collapsing that we all talk about a little bit. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. And that's a whole load of people much cleverer than me who say the answer is sometimes. So when might it work? If your fracture's stable, you dynamize it, quick, cheap operation, might work. There's probably got to be some callus there to harness, to use, probably to pack that much callus into that much gap. Simplistic argument, but I think we're back at Bob's epoxy resin. There's no gap, there's no fragmentation, maybe keep your dynamic screw or put a new dynamic screw in instead. And if you're going to do it early, except somebody shows you that example where it worked at 5 years down the track. So the honest answer to the question is we really don't know any of this stuff, do we? So that is that diagram. You know, we all know that, and we can all appreciate why. Once you've got to this hard callus formation stage, tinkering with it may, should, probably struggle to make any great difference to things. So I said I'd bring this in quick. I think we're under time. I don't think I've used any complicated words.